Nancy Dempsey is lucky to be alive. Today, with ambulance officers from Bullaroo, she relived a terrifying ordeal. 3 weeks ago, the 67-year-old went to her doctor with chest pain. Ambulance was called. She then suffered a cardiac arrest. Immediately, officers put the heart start defibrillator to work, shocking her heart back into action. She was clinically dead for 2 minutes. She now has a new life to live.
I feel marvellous. I've got 4 grandchildren I hope to see rear, and I'm very pleased.
Nancy was given a special heart pin from the ambulance service, joining a club that is living today because of the Heart Start machine. There are hundreds of members in New South Wales. It was kisses all round for the ambulance service. Meanwhile, the Bullaroo Ambos are back in their Main Street station after 4 months while workers removed asbestos from the building. Since February, they'd operated out of the Mines Rescue Centre down the road. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
The day brought together people of all ages. Various community groups joined in the fun, giving students a hand with the day's activities.
All the environmentalists that are here talking with the school kids are local people. So they'll be talking about river issues, land care issues, they'll be learning about the river quality itself. They'll be learning about recycling as well and what can be recycled, how we can reduce things with composting. There's all those sort of activities that they can learn about and have demonstrated.
Students from Taree High School and the Christian Community School weighed in with some scientific help, giving the primary schoolers a taste of binocular microscopes. And judging by the enthusiastic involvement of all concerned, nobody could have burst the students' environmental bubble.
They've got all the kids, they've got some environment group people from around the district doing things with land care, paper making, tree planting. There's a whole tree planting exercise going on around the school. So it's associated with Green Week, even though it's just outside the week itself.
It wasn't until late yesterday afternoon that anyone in Coffs Harbour knew Mr Fay had plans to attend the Silver Anniversary Debutante Ball. After a last-minute change to his original plans, the Premier arrived at the Coffs Harbour Civic Centre by limousine, accompanied by Mrs Fay, member for Coffs Harbour Andrew Fraser and his wife Kerry. Meanwhile, 35 debutantes waited nervously in the wings, making those last-minute adjustments. The Premier posed for official photographs before being led to the stage, where he greeted each of the young Debs and welcomed them into society. With the formal part of the evening almost over, Mr Fay then declared the 25th Coffs Harbour Debutante Ball open. And the Debs and their partners took centre stage.
It doesn't involve tearing a lizard apart, but grown men jerking each other around on the floor using a leather belt. The idea is to drag your opponent across the centre line or completely exhaust them until they collapse. It's by no means a new sport. Goanna pulling began on the Queensland coalfields in 1901. They even have national title belts. Today's exhibition wasn't the crowd pleaser organisers hoped it would be. Many of those looking on said they would give it a go, but pulled out at the last minute. The Australian titles will be held at Wooleye near Grafton next Sunday.
Robin and Eric Sager were asleep when their house caught on fire soon after midnight. It started in the wall around the chimney and spread into one of the bedrooms. Tragedy was averted when the couple's faithful pooch Sasha signalled the alarm. The Sagers believe she saved their lives.
She saved us, yeah. She hadn't to work us up, we'd have been gone.
The fire brigade arrived and the damage was confined to the kitchen and a bedroom. Robin and Eric spent today cleaning up. Their house was fully insured. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Swimmers from all over Newcastle gathered at the West Walls End pool for the District Winter Championships and the announcement of this year's winners. The Faraday Award is designed to assist young swimmers with travelling and training costs and act as a morale booster. This year, State Representative Linda Campbell and Australian squad member Amanda Hector shared the award and the $500.
It's a great pleasure to get. It's one of the awards you hope to get during your career.
I was pretty surprised. I thought Linda would get it because she does well at districts and that's where they usually pick it from, I thought, so I didn't realise I'd get it.
Olympic champion Joseph Walker was also given an award for his efforts at the Barcelona Disabled Games.
A 76-year-old woman was walking along this suburban Merriweather Street on her way to a hair appointment shortly before 9 this morning. The elderly lady was walking along this street, the same track that she takes every day when heading for the shops. Her assailant drove past her, did a lap of the block and on the second time round jumped out of his car and attacked her.
He's grasped her by the handbag, attempted to get the handbag out of her, but she had it wrapped, the handle wrapped twice around her wrist, which made it difficult for him. He struggled with her for a short moment. She fell to the ground and he's gone and placed his foot on her face and she screamed and yelled out.
The robber made off with her bag, which contained $300. A man living in a house across the road heard the woman's screams and called police, who arrived on the scene within minutes. The lady suffered bruising and abrasions to her knees and wrists.
This type of behaviour this time of day is unbelievable. You don't expect it, and the old lady, of course, is quite upset by the whole experience.
The offender is described as 167 centimetres tall, medium build and fair complexion. He has dark collar-length curly hair and was wearing a dark-coloured jumper and light trousers. He was driving a cream-coloured sedan.
The installation of these traffic lights at one of the busiest intersections in Western Newcastle was intended to control traffic flow. But residents say ever since the lights were switched on, noise levels from trucks braking and accelerating have got out of control.
They've gone very much higher, a lot higher in fact. We've got a lot more trucks, a lot more noise, a lot more pollution.
You can't have the doors open watching TV, you're shut up in the house all the time, you can't. You know, people come here and the first thing they say is, how do you put up with that noise?
Responding to these complaints, the Roads and Traffic Authority will carry out a series of noise tests at the intersection. The A spokesperson says a starting date for the tests is yet to be set. No further information could be provided. Although a study done earlier in the year indicated a high fence would be the most obvious way to reduce noise, these latest tests will determine if a barrier is necessary. The residents have no doubt.
We've got to try something.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The Mabo court case was won by the Aboriginal people of Miriam Island in Torres Strait. For the first time in Australian history, the High Court recognised that Aborigines' native title to the land hadn't been extinguished by colonisation. This is significant because until then, the legal view was that Australia was unoccupied at the time of European colonisation. Bill Smith from Kumpar 2 Land Council in Lake Macquarie welcomes the decision, which has recognised Aborigines' prior ownership and occupation of the land.
It's been a long time coming because it's really truly given recognition and respect to us Indigenous people.
However, some Aboriginal leaders believe that the Mabo High Court decision will benefit only certain groups of their people, who can show their connection with the land hasn't been broken. Although many Aborigines in the Hunter and Lake Macquarie areas are dispossessed, they have no land, Bill Smith says some of them may be able to claim native title because they have spiritual and cultural links to the land.
I don't think it'll make our people rush in and throw blankets and land claims left, right and centre.
Bill Smith concedes that any claim to the land would have to be tested in a court of law. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
Like any other industry, the building game has felt the pinch of the recession. But according to the Building Trades Group, some employers are pinching back. The unions say they've received complaints about several companies, both large and small, forcing employees off wages and onto subcontract labour. In that way, the group says, employers pay less tax and avoid other responsibilities.
To eliminate the 1% training levy, the superannuation levy, and to minimise their insurances in respect to compensation and other insurances.
The group has discussed the issue with the Australian Taxation Office, which is monitoring some businesses.
What we're finding, Friday night there's a master-servant relationship. Come Monday morning, they're holding out that they're being employed under contractual arrangements. Really, nothing's changed, and that's got to be a concern because what they're really saying from our point of view is that they're not employees, therefore there's no requirement to withhold or deduct tax.
Robert Fuller from the Master Builders Association believes none of his 650 members from the Hunter, Mid-North Coast and New England are involved. But he says it's possible some smaller concerns are encouraging employees to become subcontract labour to beat the system and costs. The unions say while the practice is a sign of the economic times, it's hurting the building industry.
Unfortunately, the legitimate contractors out there, the legitimate builders who are really struggling for work out there are getting beaten by this unlawful act.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
The campaign to stop local police constables being moved to Sydney was given a boost today. During a special meeting, Labor politicians told a police delegation they'd develop a strategy to oppose the forced transfers.
We have the capacity to raise the matter in Parliament. We could look at the possibility of introducing a private member's bill to try and alter things.
The proposed transfers have rankled the rank and file.
We believe that the implementation of this policy will have a grave effect on the people in this area.
However, the man behind the initiative, the Director of Human Resources, David Gill, says it's virtually impossible to get a vacancy in the Newcastle Police Service. The lifestyle and standard of living offered in Newcastle have meant it's a much sought-after location for police. The rotational transfer system has been introduced to satisfy the needs of other police. David Gill says that Newcastle Police will be replaced almost exclusively by people from Newcastle, constables who either live there now and commute to Sydney, or people who were originally recruited from Newcastle and have been trying to get back there for several years. The police service is expected to announce who will be transferred to Sydney next week. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
The public gallery at the Scone Shire Chambers was overflowing with protesters sitting in to fight the proposal. Council had already deferred the decision once before.
It's for 2 additional sheds that won't increase the activity level of the piggery up there, but will improve the accommodation for the pigs that are there at the moment.
The piggery at Parkville, north of Scone, nestles in a rich agricultural region. Nearby farmers say effluent from the setup represents a threat to their properties. Locals now fear piggery owners Brown and Hatton, the company half owned by the Prime Minister, is pushing ahead with this expansion, ready to develop an $80 million abattoir.
I feel that it leaves the option open for the piggery to expand at any given time.
The abattoir is still the subject of an environmental impact statement. Meanwhile, Council says the 2 new sheds will be strictly monitored and total pig numbers will be kept under 22,000. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
It's been a long time coming, but council staff are finally working under the one roof. The new chambers are located on the Pacific Highway, just behind the Raymond Terrace Courthouse. The chambers are almost 4 times the size of the old Port Stephens Street building and incorporate offices previously housed in demountables. The centrepiece of the $6.7 million complex is a public concourse, featuring easy access to offices and meeting rooms. The old council chambers, built in the 1960s, will be converted into a community centre. The first council meeting in the new building will be held next Tuesday.
Tim Maddison, in only his 4th game back from suspension, has cracked it for a spot to replace Paul Harrigan away on rep duty.
Timmy does maintain size, of course, but size isn't everything in football players, but he does balance the pack up a little bit with that. It's just another good young local product that's pushed his way to first grade.
The 19-year-old admits behind the smiles there will be pressure.
I suppose there will be that slight bit more pressure, but boys will be able to calm me down or relax me a bit.
Playing alongside will be close mate Adam Muir. Muir made a few mistakes early in the Canterbury game after coming off the bench, but the coach believes he later redeemed himself.
You just don't know when you're going to go on at all, at what stage, so it's better to start the game, just makes it a lot easier.
Rodney Howe will swap places this week and warm the bench, while Jamie Ainscough faces a fitness test later in the week on his injured knee. The full side is O'Davis, Godden, Brunker, Hagan, Ainscough, Matthew Johns, Martin, Glanville, Muir, Madison, Butterfield, McCormack, Boyd, with Howe and Rodwell on the bench. Creativity can strike at any hour, and when it comes by Les Powell, he just has to paint, regardless of the time. For the past 3 months, he's been working on his masterpiece, a giant 5 by 2 metre mural featuring historical buildings around Merewether and prominent figures in the history of the South Newcastle Rugby League Club.
I was very taken by the detail that Les does put into his pictures. He actually went to each site and did a pencil drawing of them, counted the bricks even, and got the right number of bricks on the front of South and all that sort of thing.
He's gone to great lengths to put some life into it.
That took a couple of weeks to do the painting of the internationals in when they were so small and things like that, to get the character of their faces and things like that.
The painting, when complete, will also be a major achievement for the retired decorator. He lost a number of fingers during World War II, but it hasn't forced a change in his style.
It's a good relaxation, a good labour of love. Really enjoy it, I really do.
Les spends an average of 6 hours a day on the project and is confident he will have it finished and hanging above the bar in the Leagues Club by the end of the month. Then he says there will only be one thing left to do.
Well, I think I might have a drink.
Thank you. Right, I'll get it.
Peter Money was standing in the kitchen of his homestead at about 7:30 last night when a shot rang out, a bullet piercing his jaw. The man tried to telephone for help before 3 more shots were fired, one bullet hitting the man in the right arm, another striking his wrist and another missing. The injured man made it outside, where he was found by a station hand. He was rushed to Bingara Hospital before being transferred to Tamworth Base Hospital just after 9 o'clock. Hospital staff say Mr Money is in a stable condition. Police searched the homestead today looking for any clue that may explain the shooting. Metal detectors were brought in to help find spent cartridges used in the attack. Police say they're treating the shooting as attempted murder and have called on the public to help investigations.
Small white Japanese type utility with a tray back that was possibly in the area at the time, and we're appealing to anyone with any information on a vehicle about 7:30 last night around the property of Thornley to please come forward.
Last night's decision against a referendum was welcomed by Independent Alderman Greg Piper. He'd already moved a rescission motion against Council's efforts to take the issue to ratepayers, who he believes have already shown their support for public ownership. Despite formally backing the referendum, Labor Alderman John Jenkins moved last night to drop it, arguing that agreement on an unbiased choice of words was impossible.
Some aldermen insisted that the question be loaded to show that it was going to be a major impost on the ratepayers. Others wanted it shown that Green Point was the last major area of natural bushland on the northeast of Lake Macquarie, and there was going to be no agreement.
Alderman Piper says he's not surprised at the turnaround.
Oh, there certainly would have been lobbying going on, but I think originally when the decision was made, I think that there was some dissent within the caucus themselves, and I think that that had some momentum that carried through, and they had to reassess their position.
Council also moved to officially approach Federal Environment Minister Ros Kelly for funds to help purchase Greenpoint. A letter will be sent to member for Shortland Peter Morris asking him to encourage Ros Kelly to inspect the land and discuss funding options. A spokesperson from the Minister's office today said any request made by Peter Morris would be carefully considered. However, he declined to comment on the availability of federal funds for such a purchase. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
This land at Warnervale on the Central Coast may look like a rural place in the sun, but it's seen by Wyong Shire Council as a major residential growth area of the future. To help cope with an expected 10,000 new homes, this sewage pumping station is being built. But some residents are concerned if there's an overflow or the station breaks down, effluent will end up in these nearby wetlands.
There's a possibility that raw sewage will overflow into the wetlands and hence down through Porters Creek into Wyong Creek and into the lakes system.
That's an absolute nonsense that this council
would not deserve to be in power if that were to occur. I've already explained that we have people on standby 24 hours a day. It would not get 20 yards down the road before it was cleaned up.
Councillor Sheridan says in addition to the monitoring, the station will have backup power and pumping systems for an emergency.
There's no way that this council will be in the business of constructing a station that was likely to break down.
But resident Ken Lawler believes those protective measures aren't enough and that an additional holding tank should be installed.
This outflow is going to be in the middle of this residential development, because either side of you and me is going to be houses, so it's going to be smack bang in the middle of it.
The $1.5 million project is expected to be online by the end of the year. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Count to 10. Count to 10. It was time for a drink and a celebration. The 16 teams and their vehicles, back from 7 days of travelling through Dungog, Dorrigo and Warrialda. Some of the vehicles need some love and attention, but overall they're not in too bad a nick. The main aim of the trip was to raise money for charity. Oh, and to have some fun along the way.
Late this afternoon, the crew on board the supply vessel was preparing for tomorrow's planned departure. Arriving late January, the Westralia was to stay 3 months, but plans changed after the original $4 million repair budget swelled to $12 million.
Well, they had an initial work package sort of planned, and then they got here and they thought, well, they might as well get some more stuff done while it was here, and they had the resources. And so that was basically what happened. We had more money allocated, and they identified the more work to be done.
With the vessel based near Perth, local hospitality has been welcomed.
Most of the guys are from Perth and their wives and families are back there, but a lot of people have sort of met people in Newcastle and they sort of really looked after us. It's been good.
If all goes according to plan, the Westralia will sail out of Newcastle Heads early tomorrow morning. Then there's a brief stop before heading home.
Basically just out doing some trials and things, make sure everything they've pulled out and put back together works all right, and then down to Sydney early next week.
So after such an extended stay, will the crew be sad to bid farewell?
It's made a lot of friends in the 5 months we've been here, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of people that different people on the ship will keep in contact with, you know.
We've been good to you?
Oh, absolutely, yeah, very good.
Steve Linnane is the man behind Curry's success. He spent the year looking for his side's missing link, and he looks to have found it. The Dogs have racked up more points than competition leaders Wes.
That's one thing we concentrated on this year, is our attacking play and our backing up skills, which we probably lacked a little bit last year, which maybe cost us a grand final spot last year.
Linane has also scored a mid-season coup in signing former Newcastle knight Glenn Miller.
Glenn will be playing in the centres this week, and everybody knows Glenn in Newcastle, and not only his experience, but he's a very good player. He'll do the job very well.
Last week they lost to Souths, but had previously won 5 games straight. They intend to get back on the rails tomorrow against the Cessnock Goannas, but it won't be easy.
Cessnock got a very strong pack of forwards. I'm a bit surprised that they aren't in the 5 now, but I won't be surprised if they do make the 5.
There are 3 games tomorrow and 2 on Sunday. The teams in red have the home ground. In rugby union, a full round tomorrow as well. Exciting games will be between Maitland and Mayfield East at Lawn.
The buses have been booked to take loads of angry police families and friends to picket Sydney headquarters over the scheme which would uproot and destabilise many long-serving police careers. 50 Newcastle senior constables are about to get their marching orders to relieve 50 others chafing to get out of Sydney. The plan was initiated to jog movement into an all but stagnant transfer system. Officers reluctant to leave Newcastle have lobbied the support of the Police Association and members of Parliament at meetings over the past month. Police spouses, though, are prepared to take the issue to David Gill, the department's Human Resource Manager responsible for the implementation of the scheme. In a move to defuse such a protest, Mr Gill, along with Deputy Commissioner Neil Taylor, has promised to speak to families in Newcastle next month. Meanwhile, Police Commissioner Lauer has announced a 6-month moratorium on forced transfers.
The final blueprint of how Newcastle's inner city creek and surrounds will look in years to come has been completed. It's called Throsby Creek Landscape Master Plan and includes major recreational areas plus boardwalks spread along the creek. It's expected to be completed in 4 or 5 years, costing around $10 million. The funds provided by Council, the federal government and the Honeysuckle Development Corporation. Already there's signs of progress, including a near-finished cycleway.
Well, it is going to be, to use your words, a living, breathing entity within our city, complete with residential flats and houses, places for those people to recreate.
However, not all council aldermen agree with the master plan and its linkage with Honeysuckle. The plan to convert the old woolshed site into a residential development is being opposed by Alderman John Sutton. He believes that inner city Hannell Street is too busy and noisy to have housing alongside it.
I hear what they say, but the fact of the matter is that that's been done in many, many places before, where you handle the problem of noise, do it with the actual design of the buildings.
The plan goes before Newcastle Council for approval tomorrow night.
The Matara Festival 1992 Grand Parade. The recession is over.